All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to start today off with a little bit of discussion about some of your discussion you had introducing yourselves and some questions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to deal with a couple questions every day that I saw in the discussion part of the introduction part again. Anyway, I'm going to deal with it that way. I'm going to start with a few comments for people, what they said they were in the course for. And so there was a lot of people that were looking at like university prep. That really does say university prep. So this course, yes, will introduce you to lots of different things that you will take into account when it comes to taking an economics course. You'll go over a lot of the stuff in this course over again, obviously with different emphasis, depends on what you're taking. You also, in commerce programs, you'll go over economics as well, and they'll come in development programs and all that stuff. So it's pretty cool to see that people are thinking about those paths. A lot of people said talking about understanding the news and the economic system, and yes, another great thing for people to do is to understand the world around and why certain decisions are made, and it's really when it comes to time to vote and stuff like that, it's really helpful to understand actually what policy each candidate is putting forward for their party's platform. And so people, instead of voting for the party they always vote for, they look at the priorities, the economic priorities of each party, and make a decision based on that. Of looking at it in terms of what's in front of you, what they're telling you, and like I said, making an informed decision rather than just I like that color of tie and I'm always going to vote for that color of tie, because that's not very productive in our system. Okay, I had some interesting ones. Anti-capitalism, which was interesting, and I can totally get it because capitalism easily leads to greed. However, democracy and capitalism, that mix has provided unparalleled growth and unparalleled equality in society that is not matched by any other combination of systems. Definitely not perfect. I am definitely not saying that somebody has an anti-capitalist approach to life is wrong, because I can totally get behind a lot of those ideas. I'm just saying that if you're looking at like communism as a possibility that would work, well, any kind of communist regime we've seen in the world has caused the deaths of millions of people, and really hasn't been a good alternative. But still, very interesting. I do like the idea that you get more information to understand maybe, where you have the wrong idea or it backs up your idea. So either way, excellent. Another one, this one I really liked. Not chemistry. No, it is not chemistry. There are a few formulas in macroeconomics, just warning you, but it is not chemistry. And that's a good thing, because I didn't like chemistry either. I find it interesting, but I didn't really like the class, but that's, that was just me. But I like that one. That one's a good one. I liked the mention that Jasper, he mentioned Jasper mentioned going to Tokyo. That's Tokyo. That's terrible. Tokyo, you get it. That looks more like Toledo, but that's Tokyo. Actually, no, it looks like Talago, which I've never seen. Anyway, that's awesome. I have a friend that lives in Nagasaki, and I'd love to go and visit him sometime. So I totally think that's a great opportunity. So congratulations on that opportunity. We once at Bayside had a student from Japan. He was awesome. He had two friends, and I took a trip to Boston with lots of international kids, and they were a riot. So it was good stuff. Other people were talking about getting mathy in econ. So you're gonna like the micro stuff with your graphs and your things like that. If you really want to get into math and in economics, you get into stats and what's called econometrics. which I found was horrible, but that's just because I'm not smart enough to understand the math behind it. But if you do, good for you, because there's a lot of opportunity in that field. And then I looked over the etiquette parts, and yeah, so a lot of great comments about etiquette. You really do have to watch the sarcasm and rude speak and stuff. And even I like to use sarcasm, but I have to be careful because most of you don't know me. And so if I say something or I type something that I didn't mean as a joke, I mean, I meant as a joke, but you don't take it as a joke, that's going to be terrible. So yeah, it's a good rule of thumb to keep the sarcasm to a minimum, especially in a written response, because there's no nuance there in language, and more like in there's no voice modulation, there's no body language to read, so sarcasm's hard to sell in print. Yeah, always fact check. Don't just spurt out stuff that you think you know or that you think you may have heard. Right? If your Uncle Bill had mentioned something, when last time you saw him, that doesn't mean that it means it's true. So you should really back your stuff up with evidence. It's always great. Yeah, please watch the spelling and the grammar. Everything has a spell check, grammar check, all those kinds of things. There's really not much excuse to making, especially egregious spelling errors. Check your typos. It's just it's the proper thing to do. When you're doing any work, you should have pride in your work. So you should be able to. You should take pride in, and what's the word? Take ownership over what you put down. And then I saw no slurs. It's not slurs. What's that word? Like shorthand or no slang. And then I saw this. I'm like, what? What is that? I had to look it up. So I thought it used to just be fam. And now we've got an H in here. I don't know why. I don't know why we put the H in here. Like, this is what it used to be, just fam. And now it seems, unless I've got the meaning of the word wrong. Anyway, kind of cool, that a little bit of slang. Anyway, so that's just that. Those are some of the comments I noticed in your introductions. And thank you for filling that stuff out. You're going to get a picture to look at. It's going to be one of the things that's unlocked in the content. And I want you to go through these 4 ideas again that we went over yesterday, right? So significance, is it a significant economic issue? Who are the stakeholders? What are their perspectives? What's the cause and effect on the different stakeholders? And then are we going to, is it something that's going to be stable, or is it going to be more volatile or variable over time? So those are the 4 things you're going to be looking at for that. Okay, I'm going to move on to, I'm going to move on to the questions just before I explain the main thing you're doing today. Also, by the way, there's going to be a second video that comes out that goes over a lesson about scarcity and choice. You can look forward to that. I know you definitely are. You can look forward to that, though, in kind of the second half of the day. You're going to be working on something else before that, but we'll get into that in a second. So I thought I would look into some of the questions that were left. And again, great questions. So the first one was, and again, I'll keep doing this. So I took 4 questions, just 4 random questions. So what happens if we stop buying from big box stores? Well, that's a great question. And there's no simple answer to this. Obviously here Walmart is a giant store. One of the, as a consumer, your biggest effect on business decisions is where you spend your money, right? So your money and your feet do all have all the power. So if you don't go to big stores, then they're going to change their approach. And so whatever it is that's drawing you to local stores, big box stores will pivot to try and manipulate or try to attract you to their store instead. Be very interesting. One of the things that would come up would definitely be inefficiency. And that is a big thing of why big box stores are cheaper, is because they have efficient supply chains Not only that, sometimes it's because of the pay they give their employees, but efficient supply chains get the products there cheap as possible. They pressure suppliers to produce things cheaply, and that's how they get lower prices. If you went to local stores that were smaller, you'd have to pay more, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but those supply chains would then end up being much more inefficient. And for the environmental people, I'm not sure it would actually end up being better because you might have more trucks on the road. But again, you'd have to balance that out against a bunch of other factors. So that's a good question. But yeah, I would say there'd be some massive pivoting in their business models if they found that people were going local. They'd have to figure out why, and they would change things up. But efficiency would be one of the things that suffers for customers. The next one that I'm looking at, all right, so, hey, why did he stop moving? There he goes. All right, so the next one was, what is the Wall Street, what's the future of Wall Street given this whole GameStop thing? And as I said, that, silver is now on the rise. Again, who knows, because is it going to be, are we going to leave it alone? Or is it going to be regulations on small investors? I would say it was going to be one of the two of those things. I don't know which one they're going to do. I have an idea that it's probably going to lean towards this because of the intertwining interests in government and Wall Street. So probably, don't know though. I do think there's going to be a pivot in the way that business is done on Wall Street though. So that should be very interesting to see how it affects things like selling short and hedge fund decisions and things like that. So anyway, we'll have to stay tuned to see. I know these are not the greatest answers, but whatever. I don't have all the answers. What happened if there was no interference from the government when COVID hit? What would be the effect of that? Well, this. Just look at the United States. That's the problem, right? Why do they have the quarter of the cases in the world? This stuff. This was a bike gathering that happens every year in Sturgis. That's one of the Dakotas, I think. And it happened during COVID just the past summer, and there were no restrictions on it, right? There's no mask. Maybe this guy here, I don't think that's his beard. I don't think it's a mask. But it was huge. I mean, it had concerts and they had all this stuff. And of course, there were cases that came out of it. So that's what happens. There's no direct message. When Trump was in charge, he didn't have a direct policy or message towards the American people because he didn't want to, take a stand against his popular base. I don't know whether he believed, how much he believed in the virus or not, but he just didn't want to take that route, and it just went rampant because now all the decisions were made at the local levels. Like the states made the decisions, sometimes they passed them on even lower, and there's no central message saying mask, isolate, distancing, washing hands. All those kinds of things were muddled because there's no central message from the government, and there was not very much funding, so lots of people found themselves, needing food and needing all sorts of services. So that would be a big thing that would happen in terms of like a pandemic like COVID, is that a government does need to step in if they're going to control the spread as much as they can. That's one thing, and then the other thing is to get the messaging out for people to do things, and then to provide services for those that don't have them, because then you just have a lot of problems, and everything would be closed to the people that need those services. All right, last one. This has nothing to do with it. I searched it up and I just thought it was hilarious. It's like 2 avocados, or 1 avocado, half and half, whatever. Anyway, that's awesome. So the question was, the current trend of low housing inventory, what will happen? Well, I think the low inventory of housing is most to do with COVID, of course. One thing that's happened, right, is you've got people from Toronto and they're moving out to smaller areas. And so the people in the smaller areas can sell for large amounts of money. And there was lots of bidding wars in different areas. So it was a seller's market, but it's not a buyer's market. So if you're in one of these smaller areas, where are you going to move? You have to move to a further depressed area to get a savings and get a return on this higher purchase price. Otherwise, you're just paying more for a similar house or a bigger house, and you're not winning out in the end. Eventually, though, when COVID is under control and we have these things pass, housing inventories will go back up, maybe even rapidly, because people will suddenly get that urge to move. Maybe they'll move back into the city because they want all the services and the nightlife and all that kind of stuff, or maybe people will just move laterally in communities. But it'll probably pick up again. Is my estimate there, because as it makes it very difficult to sell and buy a house in COVID for very different reasons. Anyway, those are just 4 questions. Great questions. There's lots of other ones that I'm going to go over at other times. And okay, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the assignment. All right, so going into the content here, there's going to be a lot more stuff in here. Oh wait, in here than you have. So it's going to be the history of economic thinking. That's going to be it. And basically, why can't I? There we go. Basically, I have a long list of, and I'm going to have to find 4 more because we have 35 people on the roster so far. But there's all these different theories, and the goal is for you to provide a visual explanation of one of these theories. So every person just does one theory, and only one person can do it. So if you want to do, for instance, Measuring Wealth, William Petty, then you're going to do that one and no one else is going to do that one. So it's going to be a race to claim which one you want. And you're going to do that by going to the discussion and just naming. The instructions are there, but just naming the theory that you want, and then you claim it. And we'll do that until they're all gone. But what I really want is a quick visual and accessible explanation of the theory. Right, so very little bit on the theorist and the background, but really, what does the theory mean, and where did it come from? How does it work, right? And if it's outdated, then you would say it's outdated. But something very accessible, very visual. So, like if you do Prezi, slideshows, something like that, videos, whatever it is, something that people can access very quickly and get the gist of it. So that is what after listening to this, you're going to do the picture reactions, and you're also going to get to doing this, and then you're going to, of course, while you're working on this, you're going to be stoked and pumped for that scarcity and choice discussion we're going to have later. Let's go. All right, so I will talk at you later. Have a good day.